There we go. All right. So Gary, I was reading through some of your, I was reading through your email with your questions in case you weren't able to be here. Um, and I was looking at question number one, the map that NT Wright has on page 139, which is this one right here.
Yep.
Shows the route going north of Cyprus and then making their way down to Tyre. And um, so here's the so it's one of those. It seems to be one of those odd things that happens when you translate from one language to another. So just for reference, here's the map in the back of my Bible, and there's the route going south of Cyprus. Now, and NRSV says, let's see, hold on, let me make sure. It's verse 3. We came in sight of Cyprus, and leaving it on our left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre. So, so the original language, which I looked up real quick, is the word that's for left is it's either it's used for on the left hand side or the left, but it also has this additional meaning of a literal definition that says that it's well named to avoid the evil omen attached to the left. So there's this sense that somehow right is good and left is bad. And so you want to avoid the left. So if you look at it that way, again, and the translation, N.T. Wright did his own translation for the book. He translated that himself.
Okay.
So the idea is that I think what he is getting at when he says, we came in sight of Cyprus, left it on our right side, sailed to Syria and arrived in Tyre, is that he's using the idea of staying away from the, they're staying to the left of it is kind of where, as they're coming, because they're coming from the west and heading east, so the left would be on the north side of Cyprus to come around it.
Like I said, it doesn't matter in the scheme of things. It was just interesting that everything else I saw was to the south.
Except and the south route makes more sense, I mean, geographically, unless there was unless there was a storm or some other reason to go north of the island, because it extended their trip if they went north and had to come back around. It seemed like the south route from Patera into Tyre would have just been the natural route for them to go. And yeah, they saw it on the left-hand side and they just kept on going. It makes a lot of sense. But I think that's what he's trying to go for, is that, if there's this idea of, avoiding the left-hand side, then you go, anyway, I don't know. I can't, again, it's probably one of those idiomatic.
I want an answer.
I know, right? The answer is, I don't know.
There you go. Put that in caps.
Yeah.
Right. I'll have when I get to that portion of my sermon, I'll just put a little line at the bottom that says,
yes.
Sorry, Gary, I still don't know.
Don't know. Yeah.
Oh, you're not going to talk about that? I mean, no. Are you going to talk about the trip to Tyre? Okay.
No.
I figured you were going to be somewhere deeper in there.
No, I sort of hit that a little bit at the end of last week's message and just kind of was like, and they made it back because the action is in Jerusalem this week. Literally. All right, very good. So chapter 21 obviously opens with that nautical journey. When we get to verse 7, they have arrived in Tyre. So I'm just going to jump in, and then y'all stop me whenever you need. Okay. So this is, hold on, let me make sure I'm in, it should be, so we're going to start on Monday, March 8th. That's the reading for Monday, March 8th, the 7 to 14. So when they get to Tyre, arrived at Ptolemais, they were greeted by the believers. They stayed there one day. Then they go to Caesarea, so they're just making their way down the coast. And when they get to Caesarea, Philip shows back up. Remember Philip, Ethiopian eunuch, back in chapter 8? Same Philip. And now he has 4 daughters. So, so he has set up home here in Caesarea. And now he has 4 unmarried daughters who have the gift of prophecy. Wow, that's pretty cool. And except it's not them that prophesy, it's actually this guy named Agabus that comes onto the scene. He comes down while they're staying there. A prophet named Agabus comes down from Judea, and he came and he took Paul's belt, bound his own feet and hands with it. So somehow he hogtied himself. I don't know how you actually do that, but anyway. And he says, "Thus says the Holy Spirit, this is the way the Jews in Jerusalem will bind the man who owns this belt and will hand him over to the Gentiles." So, so he's saying that Paul is going to be bound and tied in Jerusalem by the Jews and hand him over to the Gentiles. And so the people freak out about this. They're like, "No, you can't go to Jerusalem. Don't go. If this is going to happen, don't go." And Paul answers in verse 13, "What are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? For I am ready not only to be bound," so tying back to, tying, see what I did there? Back to what Agabus said. Sorry, that was bad.
Yeah, I should hope so.
I need something funny. Keep it up.
And so he's referencing back to what Agabus has said. And then, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus. And so that's what he tells them. He's like, "I've got my mind made up. You're not going to convince me otherwise." And so the Spirit says, "You're going." And he says, "All right, I'm going." And so since he would not, verse 14, he wouldn't be persuaded, we remain silent except to say the Lord's will be done. All right. Now, Luke uses the "we" again here. So that means that he was part of the crowd. He might have even been some of the people who were like, "Hey, don't go." But in this moment, it's he won't be persuaded not to go, so they remain silent. They just let it lay still, and they say the Lord's will be done. Now, there's other places we've heard this. In the Lord's Prayer, it's "Your will be done." In the Garden of Gethsemane, it's not what I want, but what you want. That Jesus says. So this is sort of this refrain here, and in N.T. Wright in his commentary, he makes the parallel case, but he also then goes further to say that Luke's not trying to make Paul the new Jesus. He's saying that some of these things are happening again, but Paul's not going to Jerusalem to die. So so there's he makes a okay, hold on. I made a note in here. All right. So all right, on page 141, last two paragraphs, he says that he's in verse 13, he is ready not only to be tied up, but to die in Jerusalem if that is God's will, and if it will bring honor to the name of the Lord Jesus. Eventually, the whole party agrees with him in the words of the Lord's Prayer and in the words which echo what Jesus himself said in Gethsemane, "The Lord's will be done." And it is precisely that echo which raises in our minds, if we are alert to how Luke is telling the story, the question of whether Paul is going up to Jerusalem as Acts reaches its climax is somehow to be seen in parallel with Jesus going up to Jerusalem as Luke's own gospel reaches its climax. So there is a point, the turning point in the Gospel of Luke is Luke 9:51. And when look at there. There's a reference to it in the question. So Luke 9:51 is the turning point of the gospel. And what Luke tells us there is that Jesus, when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Other translations have that he turned his face to Jerusalem, but basically what's going on at that moment in the gospel is that Jesus is pushing all of his effort towards Jerusalem and what is going to happen there. And so that eventually leads us to the passion narrative, his death, resurrection, and ascension. So now Paul has committed himself to go to Jerusalem, but he is not the main actor in the book of Acts. The gospel is the main actor in the book of Acts, and the Spirit empowered the gospel. But it's we're reaching the climax of the book of Acts, and so what we'll find is that Paul is going to suffer, and he already knew that. He knew that way back in chapter 9. We reiterated it again last week, as he is, saying that he's willing to go. The Spirit has told him, "You're going, and yes, there will be persecutions. Yes, there will be imprisonments." And he goes anyway. Anyway, that's so that's what he's telling them in this moment. That's what Paul is telling the people in this moment, is that I'm going and you're not going to stop me. And so he says, "Why are you weeping?" Basically sobbing uncontrollably. "And why are you breaking my heart?" Also another Greek idiom. Anyway, it's a English translation of what he's saying. You're weeping. Why are you weeping and breaking my heart? For I am ready not only to be bound, but even to die in Jerusalem. Because he knows his life is not his own. He knows that he's going to share the gospel. So then verse 15 and 16 is the next day's reading, Tuesday's reading. And they go up to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples from Caesarea come along. And my guess is his name is pronounced Mnason, kind of like mnemonic kind of deal, that MN. So I would go with mnemonic or Mnason of Cyprus. And so they express hospitality by opening the home, and traveling along with them. Let's see. And so the other question on that day is, how is the understanding of Paul's mission expressed here? It's really the understanding that he's going to Jerusalem, and because they love him, they're going to go with him, and they're going to help him out however they can. So they get ready, they go up to Jerusalem, and they find a place to stay. And my guess is they encourage him along the way, because things are going to start turning south. Just speaking of going south, I know, right? I can make another pun on that anyway. First the boat ride goes south, and now the situation in Jerusalem's going south. Anyway, man, I am on a roll today. Okay.
Yes, you are.
I'm so glad this is being recorded. Okay. Okay. So that's the first 16 verses of chapter 21. And then we move on to the couple of bigger chunks in chapter 21, the last couple more chunks. So when they first get to Jerusalem, they are welcomed warmly. by the brothers, so the believers, probably the remaining apostles. James is mentioned in particular, that Paul goes and visits with him, and all the elders were present. So all the main leaders in the Jerusalem church are there. And he relates one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. This sounds familiar because he's done this before. He did it at the end of the first missionary journey before the Jerusalem Council. And more than likely, he did it at the end of the second missionary journey in his stopover in Jerusalem as well. So he's telling them about Ephesus. He's telling them about Philippi. He's telling them about his trips through Lystra and Derbe and Corinth and all the places that he's gone, and telling them how the gospel is being spread into Gentile territory and going to the ends of the earth, which is what Jesus said was supposed to happen. And so they hear it, they praise God, they say to him, you see, brother, how many thousands of believers there are among the Jews, and they are all zealous for the law. They have been told about you that you teach all the Jews living among the Gentiles to forsake Moses. So they're turning it, they're telling him what people are hearing. And so he says, so they say to Paul, you see, brother, how many thousands of believers there are among the Jews. So even in Jerusalem, people are still being converted to Christ through the work that they're doing. But what they're hearing is that you're teaching, so Paul is teaching all the Jews living among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, to tell them not to circumcise their children or to observe the customs. So basically, to be a bad Jew is basically what they're hearing. And he says, so N.T. Wright phrases this as like, so set up a ruse, basically. So what you should do is, we have these 4 guys who are under a vow, and you need to join them, go through the rite of purification with them, pay for the shaving of their heads. Thus, all will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, but that you yourself observe and guard the law. So what people are hearing is that Paul is not only telling the Gentiles that they don't have to be circumcised and they don't have to follow Torah and that they don't have to, keep kosher and all that kind of stuff. But what they're hearing as well is that he's also telling the Jews they don't have to keep the Torah. They don't have to circumcise their children. They don't have to observe the laws. And that's what they're getting upset about. So they have this plan. It's like, they're like, okay, Paul, come into the back room here. We've got an idea for you. Let's try this on for size. And so they've got these 4 guys who are under some kind of vow, probably a Nazirite kind of thing, where, no alcohol, no hair cutting, all that kind of stuff. And so now they're coming to the time of purification. And so that means they're going to shave their head. Remember back in chapter 18, when Paul got to on the other side of Corinth, before he got on the boat, he had his head shaved because he was under a vow. I don't know what was all going on there, but that's 18:18. And so, but if you pay for them to get all their head shaved and you go through the ritual of purification, then everybody will go, oh yeah, Paul's still a good Jew. It'll be fine. And it will dispel all those rumors that that you're telling the Jewish people not to be good Jews. Let's see. So that goes all the way down to end of verse 24. Verse 25, but as for the Gentiles who have become believers, we've sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, from blood, or to strangle, from fornication. That's Acts 15. That's the letter that they've, that's on the books already. So Paul goes along with it. He took the men. The next day, having purified himself, he entered the temple with them, making public the completion of the days of purification, when the sacrifice would be made for each of them. So he goes along with this little plan, but my guess is he had in the back of his mind that it wasn't going to end well, that he knew that there would be people who would see through it and still be upset. That is like, why is he doing this? What's really going on here? Um, so so then things take a turn for the worse, and it's not from the Jewish side, or it's not from the Jerusalem side of things. It's from a somebody from Jews from Asia who are in the mix here. So so verse 27 starts a new section. So this will be Thursday's reading, the 11th. So when the 7 days were almost complete, the Jews from Asia who had seen him in the temple stirred the whole crowd. They seized him, shouting, "Fellow Israelites, help! This is the man who is teaching everyone everywhere against our people, our law, and this place. More than that, he has actually brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place." So they believe the rumors, and they've now tried to seize him and point him out to the Jewish people in Jerusalem to say, this is the guy who's been undermining our law, undermining our customs, undermining our beliefs, and now we need to do something about him. And in fact, he has somehow, they don't see Paul with a Greek person going into the temple farther than the Greeks should be able to, but they believe, they make an inference because verse 29, they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, with him in the city, so they supposed that he'd also brought him into the temple. That's a big leap, but they put 2 and 2 together and got 5, I think. Anyway. So there they seize Paul and they start shouting, and all of a sudden the city is in an uproar. Sound familiar? Sort of like Ephesus, except now it's the Jews instead of the Greeks.
It's also like Stephen.
Yes, it is. So they all rushed together. Again, these cities were closely packed together. I mean, people, if something was disturbing was happening if there was some kind of disturbance on the street, people close by heard about it, and then it just kind of got farther out from there, and people just kind of rushed in. They seize Paul, they drag him out of the temple, and the doors are shut, or the gates are shut. And they were trying to kill him. The tribune, so the Roman authorities, hear that Jerusalem is in uproar. They take soldiers, centurions, and they run down. And as soon as the Roman officials show up on the scene, everybody stops, because they know that the Romans will be even more painfully, that if they don't stop, they're going to get stopped by the Romans, and they don't want that. So they stop beating Paul. The tribune comes, arrests him, orders him to be bound with 2 chains, and then inquires about what he's done. It's like, shoot first, ask questions later. So he inquires who he was, what he's done, and while there, if you can sort of imagine, I mean, obviously there's this massive amount of people. The centurions and the guards run in, they grab Paul and they start pulling him out. And as the tribune is there, he's trying to ask Paul questions, and all of a sudden the crowd is just like, he's this, he did this, I mean, and it's just this cacophony of noise going on here, because they're already just all ramped up. So he orders him to be, he can't learn the facts because of the uproar. He ordered him to be brought into the barracks, so where the soldiers live, to try to get a little bit of peace. And as they're going up that way, the violence of the mob was so great that he had to be carried. The soldiers had to pick him up and carry him into the barracks. And still, the crowd follows and keeps shouting, "Away with him." So I mean, they're like probably close right up on the barracks and beating on the doors and windows, or their windows, I don't know, probably not glass windows, but at least cutout windows. And they're just shouting for Paul to be done away with. So that's Thursday's reading, I believe. So Paul has caused quite a stir in Jerusalem. which again, he knew ahead of time was coming. He knew that something was going to happen. He didn't know exactly what it was going to be. He just knew that there were going to be persecutions and imprisonments, and now he's got it right here. So I'll stop there. We can keep, let's see, the rest of the week. We'll get into chapter 22. Yeah, 5 verses into chapter 22 as Paul is defending himself for Friday and Saturday. But I'll stop there. What questions do you have? Anything I said unclear, or anything that you, as you were reading, you were like, oh, I need to ask about that. I don't know. And I don't know. Let me look back over your questions, Gary. Make sure I got to those.
The only thing that you didn't touch on, I think, was that last question on March 11th.
Okay. Why was Paul unable to defend himself?
Other than the size of the mob, is that the only reason?
Pretty much. I mean, he wasn't really given a chance until they extracted him from that scene. So as soon as you get to verse 37, he begins to speak to the tribune. So, and then amazes the tribune, because not only does he speak Greek, but then he amazes the crowd because he speaks in Aramaic, because they think he's anyway, they're not quite sure who he is. So, all right.
Back on March 8th, Agabus.
Yes.
He's also, pardon?
Go ahead.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
He's also back in chapter 11. He's the one that predicted the famine in Jerusalem that would happen 15 years later, which is evidently what's happening now, because that's why the Jews are needing all the money brought to them, or I should say all the Jerusalem people are needing money brought to them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That's the one.
Yeah, let's see here. I find it interesting that Paul now seems to be going through the same thing Stephen did. And in fact, Paul was at Stephen's.
Right.
He's got to be thinking, I think I've been here before in a different role.
a serious case of deja vu.
Yeah.
He's probably looking around to see who's holding the cloaks. All right.
That's basically all I had, I think.
Okay. Very good.
I really like this because we are this close to pulling the trigger on a world cruise, and we will be going to Rome and Ephesus and Jerusalem. I want to see where he went, and
yeah, it will bring the scriptures to life like never before when you do that. It's on my bucket list. I haven't been to the Holy Land, and I'd want to go now. Having done this, I totally want to do the cruise through Paul's journeys. So maybe I'll take the inland route, not the boat.
you can't call it a boat. Don gets very upset.
Oh, sorry, it's a ship.
Shit.
A
How
boat
long
is
is
the
that
thing.
supposed to take?
111 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, we leave out of LA and of course end up in LA.
Wow.
6 continents.
Wow. No Antarctica?
No, that one we haven't gotten.
Hmm.
Probably won't either. We were close enough in Alaska and Canada, but no.
Okay. Okay. So 21:37 through 22:5 is the beginning of Paul's defense. And I will more than likely, I don't think I'm going to touch on this. I know I won't touch on it this week. Trying to pull up my.
Where is your sermon coming from this time?
Right now it's coming from verses 7 to 14, when he, again proclaims that he is willing to go even to die in Jerusalem, that he set his face there. Yeah, next week I'll do the first few verses of the first 16 verses of chapter 22. So his defense and his retelling of his conversion experience. So let's see. All right. So all right. So we pick it up in verse 37 at the same very spot. He says, just as he's about to be brought into the barracks, he says to the tribune, in Greek, may I say something to you? And so at this moment, the tribune realizes that he's not the Egyptian who has been accused of rioting, who he thought he was. He's somebody else. Paul says in verse 39, I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of an important city. I beg you, let me speak to the people. He gets permission. Paul stood on the steps and he motions for the people for silence. And when there is a great hush, he addressed them it says in the NRSV, it says in the Hebrew language, it's in Aramaic, which is the spoken language at the time. And he says, brothers and fathers, listen to the defense that I now make before you. And when they hear him speaking in Aramaic and Hebrew, they become even more quiet. So he amazes them, they hush down even more. And he says, again, I am a Jew born in Tarsus in Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, educated strictly according to our ancestral law, being zealous for God, just as all of you are today. I persecuted this way up to the point of death by binding both men and women and putting them in prison. We remember this from earlier in the book. As the high priest and the whole council of elders can testify about me. From them, I also received letters to the brothers in Damascus and went there in order to bind those who were there and to bring them back to Jerusalem for punishment. So he is, so twice, once to the tribune and then once to the crowd, he identifies himself as not only a Jew, but a Jew who was born in Tarsus in Cilicia, and that he studied in Jerusalem at the feet of Gamaliel, one of the most celebrated rabbis in Jewish history, and that he was educated strictly according to the ancestral law, being zealous for God, and that's shorthand for that he was brought up in the Pharisaical tradition. And so he knew the scriptures forwards and backwards. He knew the Torah, he knew the laws forwards and backwards, and kept them. And then he connects with them by saying, just as you are, zealous for God, just as you are today. Remember back in, let's see, 21, 20, when the believers in Jerusalem say to him, you see, brother, how many thousands of believers there are among the Jews, and they are all zealous for the law. So they're similar in their ilk to Paul, and so he's connecting with them. You're zealous for God, I'm zealous for God. Let me tell you about what I did. And so then he goes on and he says, I persecuted the way, that's what he calls them, wanting to put them to death, binding men and women, putting them in prison. I got a letter from the high priests to go to Damascus and do the exact same thing and bring them to Jerusalem so that they could be punished. And then he goes on to recount the Damascus Road experience from chapter 9. This is the first of 2 times in the next few chapters that he will share this story again. I think it's in chapter 24. Let's see. Hold on. Let me just double check. Oh, no, it's chapter 26, before Agrippa. Chapter 26, he will share his Damascus Road experience again. And so he's setting the stage here at the opening of chapter 22 to tell them, this is who I am, this is what I've done, this is, this sets the stage for me to continue my faithfulness as a Jew. But he's going to turn it in just a moment, later on in 22, to say, but the Messiah has come and his name is Jesus. And this is what, happens after that. So but he gets right to the edge of that. And this is going a little bit further into chapter 22, and we can come back to this, but he in the middle of chapter 22, verse 20 and 21, he says that he was praying, he fell into a trance, and Jesus said to him, verse 21, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. And when he says to the Jewish people, the Jewish believers in Jerusalem, that he's going to the Gentiles, that's the end of it for him. That's the end. They're just like, no, we can't do that. And so again, because they're zealous for God in the Jewish way, they don't want him going to the Gentiles. So then if you just flip to the next verse, 22, up to this point, they listened to him, but then they shouted, away with him. He should not be allowed to live. So then everything just goes, then he has to get extricated from there. And he has to play his Roman citizen card again. Now, I'm really far ahead now, so I'll back up a little bit. Sorry. But anyway, I give you that so that you can kind of see what's on the horizon about what's happening, because all of this is just happening really quickly. I mean, the narrative here is moving quickly. There's no like, and he stayed in Ephesus for 2 years, and now it's time to do something else. So there's no chill time here. It's, these things are happening fast. All right. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully I didn't blow your minds, but
I couldn't write fast enough.
I'm sorry. We'll come back to it next week.
Yeah.
So let's see. I've gotten you all the way. Let's see. We go to 22. Yeah, you're all the way to like March 17th now. We covered that far, so we are way ahead. Anyway. Okay. But I will be preaching from Monday, March 8th reading, chapter 21, 7 to 14. That's the reading I'll be preaching from on Sunday. Actually going to record it tomorrow. So this is good practice for me. I'll try to stop. You're like, Dean, why did you preach for 60 minutes? Oh, because it was just so good. I couldn't stop.
I had quite a few pages of notes for him Monday night from your sermon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. I mean, this is up until he gets on the boat to go to Rome, things are moving fast in the next few chapters. They're just boom, 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 boom. And it's not even jump cuts or anything like that in the movie. You know, it's not like they're, you know, cutting scenes together and smashing them together. It's all happening, one thing right after the other. So very good. And so let's see. So yeah, we won't even, because we don't get to, yeah, because by the time we get to 24, we'll do 24 and then we take a break for Easter. And then the weekend after Easter, then Paul will appeal to the emperor, and it'll be a week or two before he gets on the boat, and then we'll, you know, he'll be in Rome, and we'll be finished before too long. So we're supposed to finish up the first week of May, so. And it'll be here before we know it. All right. What else? Any other questions? Anything I skimmed over that you need some more clarification that I might be able to answer and give you? Good. Okay. Sandy?
Yep.
Good. Okay.
I don't know about good, but I'm here.
All righty. Well, certainly be praying for you. Get over all your aches, and that's no fun.
No,
No fun.
no. Feels like we've got COVID again.
Ugh. I guess technically you got a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the vaccine is. So.
Yep.
Well, again, I appreciate you for what you do and how you lead your groups and your faithfulness to do that. If there's anything I can do for you, if any way I can help you, if anything along the way, there's a question that comes up, just give me a shout, and I'll do my best to find an answer. And if the answer is I don't know, then
I don't know.
I'll tell you. I won't make something up. Very good.
Okay.
Okay. We all have a
Thank
great
you.
week. Appreciate you very much. Y'all have a great week.
Bye-bye.